There are moments in life that change how you see someone forever. Not because they surprise you, because they confirm every terrible thing you secretly suspected all along. For me, that moment happened on a random Tuesday morning at a bank. I walked in thinking I was withdrawing a little cash before work. I walked out realizing my father had stolen every dollar I'd spent 4 years earning. And the worst part? He didn't even feel guilty about it. To understand how he got there, you need to understand my dad. My father was obsessed with appearances. Not success. Not happiness. Appearances. There's a difference. We lived in one of those upper middle class neighborhoods where everyone competed without admitting they were competing. New cars, perfect lawns, expensive vacations, fancy watches. My dad treated it like the Olympics. The man would literally go into debt just to impress people he barely liked. I remember when I was 10 years old, our neighborhood hosted a summer barbecue. Most people brought burgers and drinks. Normal stuff. My dad showed up with a brand new professional-grade grill that cost more than $500. He spent the entire afternoon pretending it was no big deal. Oh, this thing, he'd laugh. Just grab it last weekend. Meanwhile, the night before, I heard him screaming at my mom because they were behind on the electric bill. That was my father. Always rich on the outside, always struggling underneath. And nobody knew it better than my mother. Growing up, money was always supposedly tight whenever I needed something. School supplies, sports equipment, field trips, everything came with a lecture. Do you know how hard I work? Do you know how much I sacrifice? That was his favorite speech. He delivered it constantly. When I was 13, I made the baseball team. I needed a pair of cleats. Nothing fancy, just decent shoes. You would have thought I'd asked for a Ferrari. He spent 3 days complaining about expenses, talking about budgets, explaining how we'd have to cut back. Then the following weekend, he bought himself a brand new set of golf clubs. The clubs cost almost 10 times more than my cleats. Apparently those were different. Those were investments. Funny how his purchases were always investments. Mine were always burdens. My parents divorced when I was 12. Honestly, it should have happened sooner. The marriage had been dead for years. The only person who didn't realize it was my dad. Or maybe he realized it and simply refused to accept it. His ego couldn't handle being left. The divorce became ugly fast. Not because of money, not because of custody, because of pride. My mother wanted out, and that fact alone drove him insane. He fought everything, every agreement, every document, every decision, even when fighting cost him more money than simply agreeing. It wasn't about winning. It was about punishment. At one point, he actually tried getting primary custody of me. Not because he wanted to spend time with me. Trust me, that wasn't it. He wanted to hurt my mother. The judge saw through it almost immediately. Mom got primary custody. Dad got visitation. And that was basically the end of his interest in parenting. Then came Karen. 6 months after the divorce. Maybe less. She was younger than him. Beautiful. Always perfectly dressed. Always perfectly supportive. The kind of woman who laughed at every joke, no matter how terrible it was. Exactly what my father wanted after getting rejected. Karen came with a daughter. Her name was Mackenzie. She was my age. 17. Pretty. Popular. Smart enough to manipulate every adult around her. Especially my father. Within weeks, she had him completely wrapped around her finger. She'd call him daddy despite having a perfectly active biological father. She'd act helpless whenever she wanted something. And my dad would fall for it every single time. Daddy, I don't understand my math homework. Suddenly, he had 3 free hours. Meanwhile, I'd ask for help with a project and get told to figure it out myself, because independence builds character. Funny how character building only applied to me. Not Mackenzie. Never Mackenzie. By the time Karen and Dad got married, the family dynamic was already set. Mackenzie got everything. I got whatever was left. Birthdays, Christmas, vacations, school expenses. It was obvious. Painfully obvious. One Christmas stands out. Mackenzie got a MacBook Pro, designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and a new phone. I got a hoodie. One hoodie. Not even my size. Karen always had excuses. Mackenzie's still adjusting. Your father wants her to feel included. She's had a difficult time. Apparently, her difficult time lasted 6 straight years and somehow required thousands of dollars. The craziest part? Mackenzie knew exactly what she was doing. Once I overheard her laughing with her friends, talking about how easy my dad was. I just do the sad eyes thing and call him daddy. Then she snapped her fingers. Boom. New phone. The entire group laughed. When she noticed me standing nearby, she didn't even look embarrassed. She winked. Actually winked. That told me everything. Eventually, I stopped spending much time at Dad's house. Stayed mostly with Mom. Visited when legally required. Kept my distance. Because every visit felt like watching someone else's family. Whenever I needed something, money was tight. Whenever Mackenzie needed something, money magically appeared. Dance competitions, cheer camps, shopping trips, vacations. There was always money, just not for me. So I listened carefully. I took Dad's advice. I learned responsibility. At 16, I got a job bussing tables at a restaurant near my mom's apartment. Minimum wage, long hours, sticky floors, rude customers, the works. But it was mine, my money. Money nobody could guilt me for spending. Money nobody could use to control me. Or so I thought. Ironically, the savings account was Dad's idea. One day, he showed up acting supportive. Said he was proud of me. Said I should start saving seriously. Since I was a minor, he helped open a joint account. I remember feeling proud depositing that first paycheck. Dad even complimented me. One of the only genuine compliments he ever gave me. For 4 years, I worked constantly. Weekends, holidays, double shifts, whatever hours I could get. I skipped vacations, avoided spending, fixed broken things instead of replacing them. Every dollar represented freedom. College, an apartment, a future away from my father. By 20 years old, I had nearly $18,000 saved. Not life-changing money, but enough to matter. Enough to start building something. I had a plan. Another year of saving. Scholarships. Community college first. Then transfer. Everything mapped out. For once in my life, things are finally going right. Then came Tuesday. The bank. The withdrawal. The empty account. The tellers staring at me awkwardly. And one transaction showing every penny was gone. $18,000. Vanished. The date showed it happened weeks earlier. And suddenly, everything clicked. Mackenzie's Cancun vacation. The designer shopping spree. The social media posts thanking the best dad ever. The expensive gifts. The luxury lifestyle. All funded by one thing. My future. I just sat there staring at the screen. The numbers didn't make sense. My brain refused to process what I was looking at. Because when you've spent 4 years building something $1 at a time, you don't expect it to disappear overnight. Especially not because of your own father. The teller asked if I wanted a printout. I nodded without really hearing her. A minute later, she handed me several pages. Every transaction, every deposit, every withdrawal, my entire financial history. And there it was. One withdrawal, one signature, one account holder. My father. Not fraud, not identity theft, not a banking mistake. My father. The same man who spent years lecturing me about responsibility. The same man who made me feel guilty for needing school supplies. The same man who acted like buying me baseball cleats nearly bankrupted him. He had taken everything. I walked outside the bank feeling numb. The world kept moving around me. Cars drove past. People laughed. Someone walked by carrying coffee. Everything looked normal. Meanwhile, my future had just been erased. I sat on a bench outside for almost an hour, just staring, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to believe there was some explanation, some misunderstanding, some emergency. Maybe somebody was sick. Maybe there was some crisis. Maybe. No. Even then, I knew better. Because if there had been a real emergency, he would have called. He would have asked. He would have said something. Instead, he waited for me to discover it. That told me everything. Finally, I pulled out my phone and called him. He answered on the third ring. Hey, buddy. Buddy. I almost laughed. Why is my account empty? Silence. Not confusion. Not surprise. Silence. Then a sigh. A long, annoyed sigh. Like I was the problem. You found out. Found out. Not, I'm sorry. Not, let me explain. Found out. My stomach turned. What happened to my money? Another sigh. Then finally. You don't need this much money right now. I honestly thought I misheard him. What? You heard me. The casual way he said it made my blood boil. Like we were discussing lunch plans. Not $18,000. My money is gone. Mackenzie needed help. There it was. Just like that. No shame. No hesitation. No guilt. Mackenzie. Always Mackenzie. The answer to every question in that house. I gripped the phone harder. You took my college fund. You can earn it back. I sat there staring into space, trying to process how insane that sounded. For years of work. And his solution was, earn it back. Like I could just casually replace $18,000. Like it wasn't years of my life. Then he said something even worse. Family helps family. Family helps family. Interesting, because somehow that rule only worked one way. Toward Mackenzie, never toward me. I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because it was either laugh or start screaming. So family helps family? Exactly. Then where was my help? Silence. I kept going. Where was family when I took double shifts every weekend? Nothing. Where was family when my car broke down and I took the bus for 6 months? Nothing. Where was family when I worked holidays while Mackenzie was on vacation? Still nothing. Because there was no answer. There never was. Dad finally got irritated. Stop being dramatic. That word. Dramatic. People love using it when they don't want accountability. I could feel years of resentment bubbling up. Every Christmas. Every birthday. Every family dinner. Every time I got treated like an afterthought. Every time Mackenzie got rewarded for existing. Every sacrifice. Every excuse. Every lie. All of it came rushing back at once. You stole from me. I did not steal from you. His voice immediately became defensive. The account was legally mine too. And technically, he was right. That was the worst part. The account was joint. The bank wouldn't stop him. The law wouldn't stop him. None of that changed what he did. Because legality and morality aren't the same thing. A thing can be legal and still make you a terrible person. You emptied everything. You'll survive. I actually stopped breathing for a second. You'll survive. Like my future was some minor inconvenience. Like years of effort meant nothing. Then he hit me with a line that finally broke whatever respect I still had left. You should be happy. I blinked. What? Mackenzie had the opportunity of a lifetime. I sat there speechless. The opportunity? Cancun. Designer clothes? Shopping sprees? That was the opportunity worth sacrificing my education for? And he kept talking. Completely serious. You're young. You can start over. Young. As if that magically replaced 4 years. As if being 20 meant my time had no value. The more he talked, the clearer everything became. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't an emergency. This was a choice. He looked at my future, looked at Mackenzie's lifestyle, and chose her, just like he always had. Only this time the price tag happened to be $18,000. I don't remember hanging up. I honestly don't. At some point I just ended the call. Because there was nothing left to say. No argument would fix it. No conversation would change him. For years, I kept hoping my father would eventually become the dad I deserved. Sitting on that bench, I finally accepted the truth. He never would. I drove straight to my mom's house. The entire way there, I kept replaying the conversation. You don't need this much money right now. The sentence echoed in my head like a broken record. Every mile made me angrier. Not because of the money. Not anymore. Because for the first time, I saw exactly how little he valued me. And when I arrived at Mom's house and told her everything, I had no idea that taking my savings would end up costing him far more than $18,000. The second I walked into my mom's house, she knew something was wrong. Mothers are like that. Sometimes they can tell before you even speak. I barely made it through the front door before she stood up from the kitchen table. What happened? I tried answering. Really? But the second I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Because suddenly the reality hit me all over again. For years. Gone. Every extra shift. Every holiday. Every weekend. Gone. Mom walked over immediately. Jake. I handed her the bank statements. She looked confused at first. Then she started reading. And within seconds, her entire face changed. The confusion disappeared. Then came disbelief. Then anger. Real anger. The kind I rarely saw from her. What is this? My savings account. She kept reading. The room became completely silent. Then she looked up. You took everything. I nodded. Mom sat down slowly, like her legs suddenly stopped working. How much? Almost 18,000. The number hung in the air. Even saying it out loud felt unreal. Mom stared at the papers for another minute. Then she whispered something I'll never forget. He actually did it. Actually did it. Not I can't believe it. Not that makes no sense. Actually did it. Like part of her already knew he was capable of something like this. That bothered me. A lot. Because it meant this wasn't completely shocking. Not to her. Not really. I sat across from her. What does that mean? Mom hesitated, then looked away. And suddenly, I knew there was more. Way more. Mom. Silence. Mom. She sighed heavily, then rubbed her forehead. And for the first time, I saw genuine guilt in her eyes. The kind people carry when they've hidden something too long. What? Another long silence. Then she finally spoke. Your father's been having money problems for years. I frowned. What kind of problems? She laughed bitterly. The expensive kind. I sat back. Because honestly, that tracked perfectly. The cars, the golf clubs, the vacations, the constant need to impress everyone. The image. Always the image. Mom shook her head. He's drowning in debt. That surprised me. Not because I thought Dad was rich. Because I thought he was smarter than that. Apparently not. How bad? She laughed again. Only this time, there was no humor in it. You don't want to know. Tell me. Mom stared at the table, then finally answered. Last time I heard, over 100,000. I nearly choked. What? Credit cards. Silence. Loans. More silence. Refinancing. I couldn't believe it. The man spent 20 years acting like a financial genius. Giving lectures. Criticizing spending. Talking about responsibility. Meanwhile, he was secretly buried alive financially. The hypocrisy was unbelievable. Then Mom said something even worse. Karen isn't helping. Of course she wasn't. I almost laughed. Karen loved spending money even more than Dad did. Luxury bags, jewelry, furniture, vacations. Every month seemed to bring a new purchase, a new upgrade, a new way to pretend they lived a life they couldn't actually afford. Then suddenly something clicked. Hard. I looked at Mom. The Cancun trip. She nodded. Probably. The shopping spree. Another nod. The designer gifts. Yes. And suddenly I understood. Dad didn't take my money because of one emergency. He took it because the entire house was collapsing financially. And instead of fixing the problem, he found the easiest victim. Me. Because stealing from a bank creates consequences. Stealing from your employer creates consequences. Stealing from strangers creates consequences. Stealing from your son? Apparently, that felt safer. The realization made me sick. Then Mom said something that somehow made it even worse. He thought you wouldn't fight him. I looked up. What? He told Karen you'd get upset for a while. She stopped. I could already feel my blood pressure rising. Finish that sentence. Mom looked uncomfortable. Then finally, he said you'd eventually get over it. I just stared at her. Because honestly, that hurt more than the theft. The confidence. The certainty. The assumption that I respected myself so little I'd eventually accept being robbed. And if I was honest, maybe he had reasons to believe that. For years, I tolerated everything. The favoritism, the disrespect, the neglect, the excuses. Every time he chose Mackenzie. Every time he treated me like an obligation instead of a son. I always stayed quiet. Always moved on. Always took the high road. Maybe he assumed this would be the same. Maybe he genuinely believed I'd complain a little, then disappear again. Like always. Mom suddenly looked nervous. Jake. What? Don't do anything stupid. I laughed. The first laugh all day. Short. Cold. Exhausted. Like what? Don't confront them angry. Too late. Because honestly, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had already passed. What remained was clarity. And clarity is much more dangerous. Because anger makes people scream. Clarity makes people act. Then my phone buzzed. One text. From Mackenzie. Just one sentence. Thanks for helping make Cancun possible, Redheart. Attached was a photo. Her on a beach. Holding a drink. Designer sunglasses. Luxury resort behind her. Huge smile on her face. At first I thought it was coincidence. Then I noticed the caption. Best family ever. She knew. The little psycho actually knew. My hands started shaking, not because of the money, because suddenly every suspicion I'd ever had became reality. She knew where the money came from. She knew exactly what happened. And instead of feeling guilty, she was celebrating it, showing off, rubbing it in. Mom looked at the photo, then immediately covered her mouth. Oh my God, I didn't answer, because my brain was already somewhere else. Thinking, connecting pieces, remembering things, every expensive gift, every vacation, every shopping trip, every time Dad magically found money for Mackenzie after claiming he couldn't afford basic things for me. A pattern, years of patterns. And for the first time, I wasn't looking at isolated incidents anymore. I was looking at a lifetime of evidence. Then another text arrived. This one from Dad. We need to talk. Funny, because until that moment, he'd never really wanted to talk. Not when I needed help. Not when I felt ignored. Not when I spent years working my ass off. But now he wanted a conversation. Because now he realized something important. I wasn't reacting the way he expected. And deep down, I think he was starting to understand that stealing $18,000 from me was about to become the most expensive mistake of his entire life. Dad's text sat on my screen for almost an hour. We need to talk. 3 words. 3 words that would have meant something to me years earlier. Back when I still believed he cared what I thought. Back when I still hoped he'd eventually become the father I kept waiting for. Now, the message felt different. Because suddenly it wasn't about fixing anything. It was about damage control. And deep down, I think he knew it too. I didn't answer. Not immediately. Instead, I sat at Mom's kitchen table replaying everything. The account, the withdrawal, the phone call, Mackenzie's text. Every piece fit together now. And the picture was ugly. Very ugly. Around 6 that evening, my phone rang. Dad. Again. This time I answered. Not because I wanted to. Because I wanted to hear what excuse sounded like after $18,000. Hello. Silence. Then his voice. Softer than usual. Careful. Like he was approaching a wild animal. Can we meet? I laughed. No. Long pause. Jake. No. Please. That surprised me. Dad never said please. Not to me. Not when I was growing up. Not when I was working weekends. Not when he forgot birthdays. Not when he chose Mackenzie over me for the 1,000th time. But suddenly, now there was a please. Interesting. Why? Another pause. Then, because this has gotten out of hand. Out of hand. Like the problem was my reaction. Not the theft. Classic. I almost hung up. Then he said something unexpected. Karen wants to explain. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Karen. Of course. Whenever things exploded in that house, Karen magically appeared with explanations. Never accountability. Explanations. As if wording could somehow erase reality. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. One condition. Public place. No house. No family ambush. No surprise interventions. Just conversation. We met the next night at a restaurant halfway across town. The kind of place people choose when they want serious conversations without making a scene. When I arrived, they were already there. Dad, Karen, and unfortunately, Mackenzie. The second I saw her, I almost turned around, because somehow she looked annoyed. Not guilty, not embarrassed. Annoyed, like my reaction was creating inconvenience. I sat down slowly. Nobody spoke at first. The tension was unbelievable. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Thank you for coming. I didn't answer, because honestly, I wasn't there for gratitude. I was there for truth. Karen spoke first. Of course she did. Jake, we're sorry you're upset. There it was. The apology without an apology. Not sorry we stole from you. Sorry you're upset. Huge difference. I leaned back. Try again. Karen blinked. What? Try again. The table went silent. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't accepting the script. Dad jumped in quickly. We made mistakes. Mistakes? I laughed. You accidentally took $18,000. Nobody answered. Mackenzie rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes. And that's when things got interesting. Because suddenly, all my anger disappeared. Not because I forgave them. Because I finally saw them clearly. 3 people sitting at a table. 3 people trying desperately to justify something impossible. Dad noticed my expression. What? I shook my head. Nothing. No, say it. So I did. You aren't sorry. Silence. You just thought I'd accept it. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because they knew I was right. Dad rubbed his forehead. Jake, no. I pointed at him. You thought I'd get angry. Then Karen. You thought I'd calm down. Then Mackenzie. And you thought I'd eventually move on. The silence after that felt endless. Because suddenly, the entire situation stood naked in front of everyone. No excuses left. No confusion. No misunderstandings. Just choices. Then Mackenzie did the worst possible thing. She laughed. Actually laughed. Small. Dismissive. Arrogant. And suddenly, every eye at the table turned toward her. What? She asked. Nobody answered. Then she shrugged. I don't see why everyone's acting like this. I stared at her, completely stunned. She kept talking. I'm going to pay him back eventually. Eventually. Interesting word from someone who hadn't earned the money in the first place. Dad immediately looked uncomfortable. Karen looked horrified. But Mackenzie just kept going. It's not like he's homeless. I felt something inside me snap. Not emotionally. Mentally. Because suddenly I understood something important. She genuinely didn't think she'd done anything wrong. Not really. Why would she? Nobody had ever taught her consequences. Every bad decision got rescued. Every selfish action got excused. Every mistake became someone else's responsibility. Then she delivered the sentence that changed everything. You weren't even using the money yet. Silence. Complete silence. The restaurant noise disappeared. The conversations around us disappeared. Everything disappeared except that sentence. You weren't even using the money yet. For years. For years of work. For years of sacrifice. For years of planning. Reduced to that, I looked directly at Dad. And for the first time, I think he finally understood how bad this was. Because even he looked shocked. Even he looked embarrassed. Then I asked one simple question. How much is left? Nobody answered. I already knew, but I wanted to hear it. Dad stared at the table. Karen looked away. Then finally, Dad whispered, nothing. There it was. Gone. Every dollar. Every cent. Gone. Not borrowed. Not moved. Not protected. Spent. The Cancun trip. The shopping. The gifts. The lifestyle. All of it. My future converted into Instagram posts. And suddenly, for the first time all night, I smiled. A real smile. Because something became crystal clear. They thought the money was the worst thing they'd taken from me. It wasn't. The worst thing they took was my trust. And unlike $18,000, that wasn't something they'd ever be able to pay back. The dinner ended exactly the way you'd expect. Badly. No dramatic reconciliation. No heartfelt apology. No sudden realization. Just silence. Heavy silence. The kind that settles over people when they finally understand they've crossed a line they can't uncross. I stood up first. Dad looked exhausted. Karen looked nervous. Mackenzie looked annoyed. And somehow, that bothered me more than anything else. Because even after everything, she still acted inconvenienced, like she was the victim. I pulled out my wallet, left cash on the table for my meal, and stood. Jake, Dad said. I stopped. Not because I wanted to, because part of me needed to hear what came next. We'll figure something out. Figure something out. Interesting phrase. Vague. Safe. Meaningless. I looked him directly in the eye. No. His face tightened. What do you mean? I mean you're not figuring anything out. Silence. Then I said the sentence nobody expected. I'm taking you to court. Karen gasped. Actually gasped. Dad just stared at me, like he'd never considered the possibility. And honestly, I don't think he had. Because parents like him spend years believing family loyalty is unconditional. They think blood relationships function like shields. That children owe forgiveness automatically. That consequences stop at the front door. I looked around the table one last time, then walked away. And for the first time in my life, nobody stopped me. The lawsuit became family news within 24 hours. Of course it did. Families spread drama faster than the internet. Suddenly relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years started calling, texting, messaging, offering opinions nobody asked for. Some supported me. Most didn't. Apparently stealing $18,000 was complicated, but holding someone accountable? That was controversial. One didn't call me selfish. Another accused me of destroying the family. cousin actually said, "Money isn't worth losing your father." That one almost made me laugh, because the irony was incredible. My father lost me over money, not the other way around. People always confuse reaction with cause. The lawsuit wasn't what damaged the relationship. The theft did. The favoritism did. The years of neglect did. The lawsuit simply exposed it. Mom supported me immediately. No hesitation. No conditions. No guilt. Just support. Honestly, that meant more than she probably realized. Because for years she'd spent so much energy surviving Dad's behavior that she'd rarely challenged it directly. Now she was done. Completely done. One evening she sat across from me at her kitchen table and quietly said, "You know what's funny? What? I spent years worrying your father would ruin his relationship with you." I smiled sadly, and she looked down at her coffee. He already did. Neither of us said anything after that, because there wasn't much left to say. The lawyer meeting happened 2 weeks later. Walking into that office felt surreal, like I was stepping into someone else's life. People sue strangers, companies, landlords, employers, not their parents. At least that's what I always thought. The lawyer listened carefully, read the statements, review the account documents, ask questions, lots of questions. Then finally he leaned back in his chair. "You have a strong case." Hearing that should have felt good. Instead it felt depressing. Because legal validation doesn't erase emotional damage. It just confirms it. The lawyer explained everything. Joint accounts, ownership rights, intent, documentation, possibilities, outcomes. The whole process sounded exhausting, expensive, messy, but honestly, I wasn't doing it for the money anymore. That realization surprised even me, because somewhere between the bank and the lawyer's office, the money stopped being the point. Respect became the point. Accountability became the point. The truth became the point. 3 weeks later, Dad showed up at my apartment, unannounced, alone. No Karen, no Mackenzie, just him. The second I opened the door, I barely recognized him. He looked older, tired, smaller somehow, like reality had finally started waning. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he quietly asked, "Can we talk?" Normally, I'd say no. This time, I stepped aside, and honestly, that conversation changed everything. The dinner ended exactly the way you'd expect. Badly. No dramatic reconciliation. No heartfelt apology. No sudden realization. Just silence. Heavy silence. The kind that settles over. Finally understood. I stood up close. Dad looked at someone. Karen looked nervous. Mackenzie looked around. And somehow, that bothered me more. Because even after I still had to. I choose to do it. I pulled out my wallet and left cash in the table. because for years she had spent so much energy surviving the natural now she was devastated. One evening she sat down. I spent years worrying your father and ruining his relationship. I smiled sadly. She looked down at her father. He already knew. Neither of us said anything after. Because there wasn't much left to say. The lawyer meeting happened. Walking into that office, as I was stepping into someone else's, people see dreams, companies, landlords, employees, underparents. At least that's what I always say. The lawyer listened carefully. Read the statements. Ask questions. Lots of questions. Then finally have a strong voice. Hearing it should have felt good. Instead it felt depressing. Because legal validation doesn't erase the lawyer explained one account, ownership intent, documentation, possibilities, outcomes. The whole process sounded exhausting, expensive, messy, but honestly, I wasn't doing it for the